What's going on, everyone? So I want to talk about D'Angelo Russell. Now, all offseason, talked heavily about him being traded. I still fully believe he is going to be traded at some point. I would be very shocked and surprised if he's on this roster come the trade deadline. And I don't really think there's anything D'Lo can necessarily do to change that. Like, D'Lo could average 38 and 8 the rest of the season, and I still think the Lakers would trade him at some point. The way Reaves is playing right now, which is what I've been screaming for him to play, because again, he starts hitting shots, it opens everything up for him in this team, everything up for him in this roster. I know I get like the troll comments from people that are like, oh, like you just want to trade me. Those people didn't listen to the actual videos and what I actually said. They just read a headline and thought that they knew what I was talking about. But for those that did, you know, I talked about Reaves and how good he's been defensively, his rebounding, him doing the dirty work, right? Him being able to make plays in this, he's thriving in this offense right now, right? But when he shoots, it really opens everything up, not only for him, but for the rest of the roster, because he can now be more aggressive in closeouts, right? He can get into the teeth of the defense, put a guy on his hip, right? And now operate and run and have the cutter, and you have all this motion going on, all this player movement and stuff, so he can be aggressive and get his shots off, but also find that cutter or throw the lob or run the pick and roll actions, right? Like, it's really unlocked Austin Reaves playing this style of basketball as opposed to Darvin Ham, who everyone's just kind of standing around, and you're asking for Reaves to create and make guys be better and make guys move. It's just, he's not, as a playmaker, as like the Chris Paul-esque point guard, Darren Williams in his prime type point guard, Jason Kidd, he's not that. But as that like combo guard who can make plays, he's perfect. And the style of offense in which they're running, he is perfect in. And I talked about it in the offseason that I did believe if we traded D'Lo, that Austin Reaves could slide over to the point and handle it. If he was going to be that on-ball creating for everything, that I still don't really trust him in. But with the type of offense we're running, I talked about how, yes, I do think he can really thrive. I do think he can take on that role. So if you were to trade for a Zach LaVine or like a Bruce Brown or something, I think those guys can play that role because you don't need that individual to make all the plays. You just need the initiator to get things going. And if push comes to shove and you do need to just get that point guard, you have this guy behind me on the basketball court, which, you're the point guard now, and he can handle that if push comes to shove and need be. So that also makes D'Lo even more expendable now, because now you're not as needy for his playmaking. I still love D'Lo's playmaking. I still love that even when his shot isn't falling and he's not really able to do the things that we need him to, he still can default. And you've seen him at times just default and he'll just rattle off like 8 straight points for the Lakers through his playmaking, setting pick and rolls, seeing the cutter, boom, right? He can make plays. And I like what D'Lo has done thus far this season, right? He's been much more active defensively. He's not an elite lockdown defender. He's never going to be, but he's been very active defensively, getting after it, working hard. He's been much more of a team player. At times he's not even closing games. You don't hear him griping. You don't hear him saying anything. He's buying in. He's doing what he needs to do, right? Like I said, when he's not hitting shots, he's getting into actions. He's doing other things, right? He's finding ways to impact the game in other areas in other ways. The problem is, with this offense, and again, with Austin Reaves playing the way he's playing right now, hopefully he can continue to play that way. If he can, then again, D'Lo just kind of gets phased out so often, so frequently. So the only thing you really need D'Lo for is his shooting, because he's the best shooter we have, particularly in volume, but he's having his struggles early on. He's had a game here and there, right? But, you know, he hasn't been what we expect him or need him to be, particularly thus far. Had the same issues last season, right? First, was 20 games or whatever. He was like 31% from 3. And then he just boom, turned it on, got in a rhythm, ended up having a historically great shooting season. Now, if he can kind of get back to that, that would be great. Because again, I believe we're trading D'Lo regardless at some point. However, until that comes, until you actually pull off a trade for D'Angelo Russell, you need the best version of D'Angelo Russell possible, right? You need him to be the best player possible. So I think there's only really two ways that outside, I mean, obviously him getting back to being that 41% on 8-9 attempts from three would definitely suffice. But I'm talking about trading him, right? Let's start with that point, right? Trading him with Austin Reaves and his ability to show that he can initiate and he can kind of run this offense, particularly the style in which we're playing. I don't think there's as big of a need for that play. Like, because the problem is, like, if you trade D'Lo, who's your point guard? Especially if you trade D'Lo and Gabe Vincent. Well, Austin Reaves, if he can kind of play that, well, then there you go. You have your point guard initiator in the starting unit. So now you can go get that more complementary, maybe 3-and-D 2 guard, or maybe you're getting like a Bruce Brown who can kind of be a point of attack guy, or maybe it is a Zach LaVine and you're bringing in a Zach LaVine to kind of give you the shooting, the offensive production, right? Another guy that can initiate this offense, give you some athleticism, right? It just gives you more flexibility because now it's not, okay, well, if we trade D'Lo, we're going to need somebody to come in and play that role. So I do think that now you kind of have, assuming that things continue in the direction in which they're continuing. Obviously, if things change, then things change, and we'll talk about it then. But based on the trajectory in which things are looking and shaping up, we should be fine with Reaves as your main initiator. Again, you can always default and just go back to LeBron James if need be, and then go get a Bruce Brown, go get a Zach LaVine, somebody like that can come in, kind of operate and be that athleticism, maybe even point of attack in case of Bruce Brown on the defensive side of things. I don't hate that idea. The other alternative, like I said, there's two. The other alternative would be to bring D'Angelo Russell off the bench. Here's the problem with that. One, would he buy in? And I know some people might think, who cares? Right? We're trading him at some point, right? But again, we need the best version of D'Lo possible. We need a D'Lo that is bought in. We need a D'Lo that is engaged. We need a D'Lo that is invested. We need also a D'Lo that's playing his best version, so maybe we can actually get some value out of D'Lo outside of him just being a salary dump guy, right? Like, it'd be nice to show people, like, hey, look, say what you want about him. He can still make plays, still hit the three ball, he can still do things. There's some value there, right? But if he just goes to the bench and completely phases himself off of this team and, he's basically checked out, it's not good for his on-court production and it's not good for his trade value, right? Now, you could argue his trade value is probably not going to change regardless, but still, right? Like, you still need him to be the best version on this team as possible. And D'Lo, when he goes to the bench, his production's just in the gutter, right? Where you look at a guy like a Austin Reaves or a Rui Hachimura. It's why I've made an argument for those two to come off the bench because their production is the same. They're actually, well, in Austin Reaves' case, it's actually more efficient off the bench. I mean, these last few games, Austin Reaves has been insanely efficient, so he's not that efficient. But like, you look at his starting numbers on average and his bench numbers on average, he's much more efficient. It was also a big part of his kind of hot streak early on after he struggled really early on and was shooting 28% from three and just looked unplayable. And then Darvin Ham brought him off the bench, and then he had that 10-game stint where he was off the bench and literally jumped from that to I'm leading sixth man voting because he turned it around. Because for Reaves, it's more about the minutes rather than whether he starts or not. But you see some guys, particularly in D'Lo, where them going to the bench is that psyche, right? Because again, who cares? Starting is just a vanity metric, right? If you start and you only play 5 minutes, who cares? If you start and you don't close down the stretch, who cares, right? Starting is a vanity metric. If you're coming off the bench and you're getting 40 minutes a game, but the guy that you're replacing who's starting only gets 15 minutes, then who cares, right? You really need to start that badly for your vanity? No, you shouldn't have, right? But if D'Lo could buy in and is willing to like, hey, I'll accept that bench role. Bring me in. And maybe you could do something where you bring in a Jared Vanderbilt in the starting unit, go with like Reaves, Vando, Rui, LeBron, and AD, and kind of go bigger with some size, have that point of attack defense, right? On offense, you can have, LeBron slotted at the point. He's going to be out on the perimeter anyway on offense. And then on defense, you have Vando slotted at the 2. It's the NBA. It's not the local Y. Position only really matters for the box score, right? And then now you can bring a D'Lo off the bench, and if he can kind of be productive and be what we need him to be off the bench, then that solves your bench scoring, right? That solves your playmaking off the bench. That solves a lot for the Lakers if D'Lo, 1, would be willing to do that, make that sacrifice, and 2, if he would be able to be productive in the way that you need him to be productive, right? I still think no matter what, you end up trading him. However, if he's coming off the bench and he's like leading, and he's like a legit sixth man, he's giving you, say, 15 a game off the bench with like 6. If he's giving you what he averages, but off the bench, say his scoring and stuff drops slightly. So let's say instead of 18, he's giving you 14. Now, if he's giving you like 14 and 6 off the bench, then like there might be an argument, especially if you can have like Vando or, Christie or whoever, Gabe Vincent, somebody like that in the starting for like defense, and you have just better balance, then you might not even need to trade. You might just be looking to go get Valanciunas and let's go win a championship. But just what we've seen thus far, again, things can change quickly, but from what we've seen thus far, D'Lo's clearly the odd man out. Right? Even in the game, where him and Reaves both had great games together. It's just, JJ Redick has been able to really maximize Reaves and is doing a hell of a job with Austin Reaves. And Austin Reaves is really thriving in this offense that you really only need D'Lo for his shooting, right? So it's just like, I would rather go get a piece that makes more sense, right? That gives you kind of better complement to Austin Reaves rather than just like, hey, another shooter, right? Obviously you need shooting, but if you can get some kind of more two-way, I just think that'd go a lot longer of a way. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, and I pass a question on to you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel? What are your thoughts? Do you agree with me? Do you think look, fortunately, D'Lo clearly seems to be the odd man out. Look, I still really like D'Lo a lot. I still am very high on D'Lo. I still like him as a playmaker. I still like him as a shooter, scorer. Right? When he's on, the dude is tough. But I just think he's the redundancy right now. And I just think if you can turn him into something that's not a redundancy, I just think it's the better approach. But anyway, again, how you feel, whatever your thoughts are, I'd love to hear it. So let me know down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot, so we enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe channel, hit that subscribe button, turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.